A bit chilly. Oh, it's how it is just school.
I'm okay,
So let's start the session with the prayer, page number 6. Soji jona la chanju bade dane jazoji dage jinzoji be zonamji dola benjen zonji dobar shu soji jona la chanju bade dane jazoji dage jinzoji be zonamji dola benjen zonji dobar shu sanje chanda soje chona la chanju bade dane jazoji dage jinzoji be zonamji dola benjen zonji dobar shu Simjen tangje dewa dan dewe judan denpa chuje dan dunye ge judan dewa chuje dunye mebe dewa danpa dan min dewa chuje Nyeren chadan nyidan tewe dan nyon chenpa la nebar juje Simjen tangje dewa dan dewe judan denpa chuje dunye dan dunye ge judan dewa chuje dunye mebe dewa danpa dan min dewa chuje Nyeren chadan nyidan tewe dan nyon chenpa la nebar juje Sumjen tangje dewa dewe judan denpa chuje dunye dan dunye ge judan dewa chuje dunye mebe dewa danpa dan min dewa chuje Nyeren chadan nyidan tewe dan nyon chenpa la nebar juje So, if you have any questions and doubts,
So one of the 6 perfections, generosity, it's advised to approach it from emptiness, and emptiness of person giving, receiving, and the act of giving, all are empty. So I want to understand specifically that what is the essence behind focusing on emptiness of the person receiving generosity? If you see the receiver just as a dependent arising, then how to generate a strong wish to help them or all sentient beings? And you might also trivialize their existence by thinking of them as empty of inherent existence, just like you look at phenomena when you are working on your attachment and anger.
진행한 적이 코르숨라게 제지식이 여러왔어. 아니 짐바당도 좀 봤으라. 아니 짐바기 퍼진기 가서 아니 유 아니 동현거랑 아니 뭐보다 제라 자와디 거랑 아니 랑시 네바르마두바 랑시메바 된댔다고 그랬던 게 여러왔어. 아니 고랑기 삼로당에 좀 봐. 유디 고랑여라. 아니 네바르마두바 데데임바 아니 가르자니 지미지 삼로당 거래 왜스라.
Pei tongsa
유디 고랑. 가인스는 안저기 최담제 덴바르마두바 레라도 좀 봐. 최라 셴바제죠라. 라. 덴바르두베 셴바제디 도와쳐 들어왔어. 다 대다에 안저기 니 비게 커서 유디 고랑 동에 짐바동서 유주라. 디 고랑라 아니 덴바르마두바 레라도 좀 봐. 고랑라 야 개첨보시다 맞지네라. 데니 덴바르마두바 주진네 데니 두바 텐데 레라도 좀 봐. 아니 비게라디 개네 첨보 마다주로 통고도. 디칸데르베스.
지단이 가서 근데 코스 미미바 산노 땅고에 가서는 차신 라 먼저 차신 조도 차신 도야 치지 치다 단다 디컵라 가시 미들레 데모 마두 타와이나라 이니 개체만 맞어 기타 미드 데모 마두 바이나 타니에 예비기 미주요라 라 데드 용건게 먼저 자왕하신 용게나레 도케나레 데와도 둥이 용건게 강사지요라 디기 둥이데 디기 강엘 때는 아주 짐바치 땅거라 콜라다 고야시라 근데 인디가라 되는 게와케요 말았습니다.
So then, when we say that in any of the practices that we inculcate, or of the 6 great perfections, it is important that it is embraced by the view of emptiness, wherein we ensure that all of these practices, now in this particular case we are discussing generosity, to be free from the 3 conceptual spheres. So when we say that things lack intrinsic nature, it's not in a manner in which we begin to trivialize the existence of things. And we need to be able to relate this to the object of our generosity too. So when we say that things are not intrinsically existent, or things are not essentially established, we are not refuting or negating the functionality of things per se. So as such, we are not trivializing the suffering of others, those who are in need of generosity. We appreciate that those who are in need of generosity and those who are suffering, their suffering comes about due to causes and conditions. So as such, it's not a way to, when we say that it's a means to overcome our attachment and aversion towards things, it doesn't mean that we begin to trivialize the thing itself. We appreciate all the functionality of objects and phenomena, but to appreciate the true nature of their suffering, the true nature of the object. That's the purpose of ensuring that these practices are not are free from what we call the 3 conceptual spheres.
지단기 짐발라디가 카리니라 파기기 ndebakon 라 지단기 동이 선발라는 샤야로 진주는 동이 선바스 이내 단나 아주 짐바들에 샤오도 또 파기 동이 선바다 파기를 지 근데 건 거야시라 배는 아주 짐바들에 가서나 추기 짐바 상승기 짐바 제고 짐바 손 라. 다 추기 짐바로 이제 지금 안쪽으로 산업 담아토니 더 지금 소소히 가리느라 들 지로 마lum바들 야가비스 저쪽에 치던 건도 주시에는 추기 짐바 잡으라. 다양지 변조 슈보다 소소 가리 이제 저 봐도 이제 그 지추는 나한테 제마도나 야 변조가나 전노가나 아주 짐바다. 라. 다 제고 짐바다 산제마도 짐바도 나 도마라. 다 산제는 아주 고하다 이게 소리 잡발라 셔도 아니 건조선들아 다 산제도 된적이 잡고 잡발래 나 대 지고라 제가 된데 가시 직강에 레강에 청보들에 라야지 다 산제기 집어라 거의 과다게 손으로 된게 집발래 잡치도 산제를 잡주고라 대 만 칼라 잡어디 잡고 좀 마셔라 제가 가르라나 가실라 산다마데 가실라 준노고 pomba 가실라 진나다 ngam다 pomba 근데 가리는 콜는 근데 꼬아시 근데 지가 소소라 간 예바다 간 줘바디 파 나와다 디 잡도 책이다 그디 강이 들려도야지 아
So then when we are talking about the practice of generosity, now more particularly the perfection of generosity, then in the Bodhicharya Avatara, engaging the deeds of the Bodhisattva, then generosity as defined as not only just an act of letting go, or letting go, but also an act of giving what others need. You have to be able to take into others' needs. So if you are able to fulfill others' needs, then that qualifies as an act of generosity. And this, I think, becomes all the more clear when we talk about the different types of generosity that is specified in the Buddhist text. So we talk about 3 types of generosity. Generosity of the Dharma, wherein you begin to teach the Dharma. Generosity of material possessions and time, wherein you begin to help others financially, materially, and so forth. And then the last is the generosity of refuge. Now this kind of generosity worldly beings cannot practice at all. This kind of generosity only the Buddha and the three jewels are capable of, to offer refuge from the suffering of samsara. So then, the ordained people who are engaged in guiding and teaching people, they are in effect practicing the generosity of Dharma, the generosity of offering the teachings. And then the lay people, they for most of the part, they begin to engage in generosity in the sense that they begin to help people who are in need of things, who are in need of support and so forth. So that's the generosity of material possession, time, and so forth. And then the last type of generosity is the generosity of refuge, which can only be offered by the Buddha or the three jewels, giving us an effective means to overcome the sufferings in samsara. Questions?
Yeah. Could you give a practical, it's all practical, an advice for a person who had the hungry ghost for a long time and like suffered or had addiction and stopped the addiction, but still suffers from attachment and thought of addictional behavior. So maybe a morning practice or an evening meditation practice or mantra or prayer, something like this also for those situations where they struggle a lot.
Tini korangi ni Geshema ki lopso lamden chinaro na dasra kisi miji la ni komshi nyemba dendera chi nyoze la sopa chang ni genja dendera komshi pet koran chag de jidwa o dende komshi nyemba ge ji ni shiju yo nasra ani odi ni donlen che la ni labja jaro na dasra ta korangi komshi nyemba de donlen che 탑시 체다 단다 자마도 이나 양스라 아니 갑갑라양 랑자 삼로 다랑 코디기도 왔어 sembathé cholarang dugido was
pin changro da ji nyode sa tan zara
o tende ta ni da genze la soba komshi damenda yora tende o tende la semba paranja ni ang shor dugido was kapkabla ngoi su peju ma tang ngoi su dinde ma shu na yasra tide zamba titskamo regiresra chezani nimaji jurim la shoba ya lan ne ra susuki ni chingyamlen chegwa ra yana komja go ya yana ani dombala da menga ani nga do choe ra tinde chi pen to boy ra tinde chi lapsolam de noron das
tare pana de di jendo da ani hode sa ya de komyachto ta 카투들 그 배선 춘지 땅어다 직 딘데로 제들에 내가 코로나 강의로 주는 딘데야 제무로 제 하인치는 대지 팽이 유지다 내가 냠유대요 말아 지금 미드 드로다 제무제 디 부자 림보바야 선탄이 제로 제니나 제마첨부첨부샤 소소를 주는 거지 가려야 받으라 이 mambo 권유 파길을 제무자선도 아니 제샤 다 이해도 거기 디레 다 제니디라 타베기라 와줘라 아 파기 게스탐나 가야지 말에 파기 미신바디기 존어데 마진발렘바로 차거로 그때 nd어봐요 말아 인자 렌드친 찡갈라라서 인자기 다 계속 라니들에 마진바로 차거 파기디 떼요 말아 딜리지는 직지는 아주 마지발렘바 직책도 지리코 가르치는 로라는 능함겨 라 단다 소소를 유협 딜을 하와 심바지 지라그레선 젠젠도 쓰자가 로라 아니 파길이 이 파길로다 페능이 고무자샤나 파길이 니자샤 숨자샤 안디 쓰길로 당가디 잔다 하오메라 견디 야하고 근데 열레다 어디 딱 간다치 가야다 능함겨 안기 지고라 제야디 디 게식 마무지 파쇼니 아니 소소기 직 타마들 캄바다 직 준노노지 사마테고 인터니 우다 티카 페마사 데라 게시 캬나 타바 이네 파쇼들 가지 강이리 파쇼기 캬나 베드 파기 미기 준노노지 사마샤나 라바이나 타 파기들 직 나미다 제메다 부고다 가리는 요라 콘솔 강이 있으다 라 딜레 소소기 남들이 레가 가르치는 거 사사 아니 소소지 페이지 당 틴도네 아보다 딘데 젠제 기타는 쓰라네 계속 말에 파라네 파션은 아찬자라 딘데 이들라 고미야 마고메서야 계시 소소를 유지된데 신수시치 디가라 아니 레가 심바 가르친 딘데 기사네 아보도 마도 젠제 때지 알아다야 돼 자원이니 아무문다 라 대강조 파이니나 라마디 베드 까요 딘데 제거 말 미자이네 타가는 아시지 딘데 젠제 제기 말라 담보딜라시네
So then when we are talking about addictive behavior, then there are many ways in which addictive behavior can develop with regards to substance, gambling, and so many other things. So I think it is important to first appreciate the fact that when we become addicted to something, then our whole lives become, in a sense, unmanageable, and as such, it has a negative consequence on our life. This, I think, is first important to appreciate. And now, for example, when we're talking about gambling and so forth, then it is important that in the act of when we pursue our addictions, it is important to reflect on how many non-virtuous actions do we actually engage in to pursue them. This is important to reflect on. So, for example, in the actual act of gambling, when we think carefully about it, it constitutes an act of stealing. Because even if you win in gambling, the other person isn't really ready to let go of their money. So as such, even if you win from one aspect, it constitutes an act of stealing. Then similarly, the act itself is informed by a sense of attachment, which manifests itself in the form of greed. You want something that others have for yourself, and as such, this greed is insatiable. It can never be satisfied at all. You can never learn to be satisfied if you begin to pursue your addiction in this manner. And then similarly, look at the effect it has not only for yourself, but on the other people too, and those around you. So for example, even though I have no personal experiences, but I have heard that people lose their houses, lose their relationships, and then the people around you also suffer. And then similarly, even if you win in gambling, imagine the harm and suffering that you are inflicting on others. So when we begin to kind of think about all this, we begin to realize that from all aspects, there is nothing virtuous in these actions. And if we begin to pursue it, then it not only makes our life unmanageable, it also makes other people's life difficult, and those around us difficult. So as such, it is important to reflect on the negative consequences, the manner in which it truly does affect not only ourselves, but others around us, and how there is no way that if you pursue such behaviors, you will never feel any sense of fulfillment, even if you in the moment feel some sense of instant gratification, but in the long run, you will never feel any sense of fulfillment at all. And in our village in Tibet, the root guru of our village has specifically banned all sorts of gambling. And as such, none of the people in our village actually participate in any gambling activities.
Teacher, tanda kung hazela digla tati changda dingira. Tisanji namda sayada zingi ra. Tisu sawena ani chini karasana susugi penjola nuda ra kundu nyogura da changina re di sayada nza konchamu ingire. Nasong ro reda tetsu be na kyongwe. Tende indi gala chi konchamu ingire samga da home ra. Tende indi ani susugi dambu ale susugi penjo tura tangda chikni ra. Yini susu lugi tune. Tendegi zengi chuwala tene ani chiki jila lawa chimba dende tura dende mambuda changzanga tene chimba tura do laya do kali dende sawa dende ka tura do nido ta shimba dende yujiri nge hawa mara mashira tende ine ani epena nga kazanga New York do di yan tende chik sanji do tsagi di chik sagwara zi tima kono pe di yoyo do wala pe mi di shola do na tima kaya dende do shina sawa dende do ta dende de sunga mambu yugiri wa chikni suzuki tune la niyo do wa 근데 인디 직 권넘버 단지니 콜 쥐니 소소를 계산치 깁니다. 라 딜레소소를 디기 요약이 주노요 무주요 와이나 소소 돌려야 볼까 칼아야 볼사 아니 이제 로바냐도 직 기지로 파티도 저 땅디다 디인데 쟁에사고 합니다. 라 온디 지랑 기저랑이 쟁에사와라 때네 네급을 소소를 생지 대화지 띠기요나 디기 탑시 땅와이나 디 탑시도 심발을 써야 되었다 돼 기점으로 라 간다코를 쩐지 토나 아니 네가 누구 말을 쩐 토게도 만도야래 베즈치.
So I think now when we are talking about addiction, then I think more often than not it refers to substance abuse, alcohol and so forth. Then I think with any kind of addiction that we might have with any substance, I think it is important to really think about how it affects us. So immediately if we begin to think about it, when we have to procure these substances, then since most of these appear to be illegal in their nature, then it's very expensive. So as such, there is a financial effect on you. Financially, it makes your life difficult. Then similarly, the more you use, the more you partake in this kind of substances, then your health begins to suffer. So financially, physically, then emotionally, it goes without saying that you have to, for a few moments of pleasure, you have to be distressed throughout your day, throughout the time. So emotionally, it also has an effect for you. And it goes without saying that spiritually, this is very, very it is very, very harmful for your spiritual growth and your spiritual well-being. So if we think really carefully about it, how financially, physically, emotionally, and spiritually it affects us, this kind of behaviors, then I think we can begin to appreciate that nothing really good comes out of pursuing such behavior. And as such, rather than pursuing this, maybe you can dedicate the same energy you extend, the same effort that you put in procuring these substances into doing something more positive. Going out with your friend, buy some good clothes with the money you spend on these things, and then do other things, and extend the same energy and effort that you do towards, extend the same effort and energy that you spend towards other more positive activities.
다 니레 냠을 가르치고는 다 가장아서 먹어지고 그처럼 나더라. 그래서 파파하게 갈라 산노야 버시 땅니 수수기 링하게 집어도 가와도도 듣는 따위나 페이지도 연구 말라. 라시 지진이 아닌 안저 단단한저 파 가던 쉬면은 상주그 센터보다 수수리가 가리는 직심전 타지 이치의 인상의 로지리와이나 딜레 파게를 네비선 발리가 말아. 제선 된대기 저항에 받이게 밀려 누우다. 라 뜬변에 쟁에 버서니나 뒤종견들이나 다 간지 칼로 콜로나 소제 그거 등거라. 라 아니 수수기 벤저트라도 수수기 남mel렸네요. 된대기 뇌에만 보지다. 제선 된대기 네비선 받이 빵와이나 가다가서 내생래죠. 근데 연내세도 방에는 돈수사만 하시긴 가도다. 미게집부터 니레니레게 미게집부터는데 야보지 숨. 들라 안에 수수 선바데 가워도 따지 야보지지. 아니 데 뒤져봐라봐라는 수수 간데게 주는데 저에는 아주 지지 쟁에 바지 뭐라. 오던들 팽기도 디디가래요. 산은 찍 karta야는 저는 덤바이네. 걔는 미치를 같이 찍마다 말데 걔는 던주디 심지 탐지기 치리 인사 방어도야. 대야 아니 소소지게 넘버 사제바다 아니 사제기 고마타에 되버데 켈랭이나 얘기들이 강치버 주주지 제 까마직 치고이나 디 아니 지소서 사제 고마타에 준주어쇼스 나잖아서 심지 탐지기 되는 인사는 걔는 찍기마다 너무 말데 미빠 자체를 팽베 가 요송라.
So then we also need to pay attention to the manner in which addiction manifests itself in our attitude and behavior. So as such, as we already discussed before, that if in the course of a day we can pay attention to the actions of the body, speech and mind, then this can be really, really helpful for us to address our attitude and behavior in the course of a day so that we do not turn to the same source of suffering again and again. So as such, if we look at the 10 non-virtuous actions, then it can really, really help us. If we become mindful about the 10 non-virtuous actions, then it can really, really help us to turn away from the same patterns. For example, think about it in this manner, that if you have to procure substances and so forth, then in the process you have to lie, you have to hide, and you have to, and then from one aspect there is also a sense of harmful intent involved here, whether it's intentional or not, because with your action you are basically not only harming yourself, but also when you go to buy these illicit substances, you are also giving the opportunity for someone to accumulate negative karma. So as such, it is important to kind of come out of our head and to be responsible about our own attitude and behavior so that it doesn't have a negative consequence on others. And I think this is very important, to come out of our own concerns all the time and to kind of have a motivation that takes into account the well-being of those who are around us and those who we come into contact with. And if we are able to kind of open our motivation in this way, then it can be really, really helpful to address these kind of behaviors that we engage in. And now, with regards to prayers and so forth, if you do believe in the power and effect of these things, then this can be really, really helpful. For example, you can begin to chant, you can begin to pray, and mantras and chantings can help in some ways to clear obstacles and challenges that you may face in your life. And now, in the process of doing this chants and reciting these mantras, it is important to shape our motivation at that moment, to help this recitations and rituals to help shape our motivation, that the very act of prayer and chanting these mantras should be shaped by a motivation that may, through this virtuous act that I am engaging in, may it also help all those who are in need of help, may it also benefit all the beings who are in suffering. So if you begin to kind of shape your motivation with the use of mantras and chants in this manner, that it helps us to come out of our own minds and our own selfish concerns, and then to be able to kind of overcome the manner in which addiction influences our attitude and behaviors. So are there any questions?
Yeah.
You mentioned that we need to do things without hurting others, but even an action like publishing a book or teaching children to draw, it can cause damage to the environment. So what can we do about it?
Teni kurang nganzuge ni mission la ni susu karechena di maneva chegoresra disongras teni nganzuge ni tebdoji pedunchina yansra yana trugula ni igilabna yansra 아니 간저 슈고 표시 땅 거로 왔다. 아니 디기 코리올라 느지기로 왔어. 슈고 표시 땅에. 그래서 아니 간데서 간저기 또는 치고랬어.
그래 지난해 맞을래야 잠잠아서 찔게 봐지 산타나 칼카보다라 폐체도 뇌체도 잠잠 빼는 가서 지난 칼라도 사와이네 나도 칼라 사와를 때네 아니 카르소다 지게 뭐뭐지 세야도 나더니 다 mambo 열어라 딱 어디 맞에는 가서 초모토로 차거라 맞에는 안 되면서 그 지난기 슈구 빠는 채월 때는 고유를 내 신동치 때는 돼 넘버에 오늘 내고라 이내 밤에 longe mambochene 야부마라 라 팅한도 고유를 내거래 이내야 쇼구디 빠는 채월 때는 부구 로전도 마음은 더나 약보 차와다 다야 게세 mambo져라 넌 뜻을 때는 가절 고발 따고라 펜도 쳐야 돼 뇌 쳐야 이유 펜도 쳐야 돼
So I think it is important that we have a realistic and sensible approach to things. If we kind of think very strictly along those lines, then maybe we also need to stop eating food, because the very food that we eat to sustain ourselves, then it affects a lot of insects and their lives too. So this cannot be helped at all, because we are in samsara. So as such, we need to be realistic and sensible. And I'm not saying it's not true that with the papers that we use for books and so forth has an effect on the environment as the trees are cut down and so forth. But we need to be able to also understand that maybe that's the con, but there is a pro to it too, wherein the education of a child is at stake here. It helps us. Now, the Buddhist approach is a realistic and sensible one, wherein we are saying that maybe to sustain ourselves, we need to make use of these resources, but to use them in a sustainable way, to use them with restraint, not simply just for the sake of it. That's the Buddhist approach.
Shimba.
No, you have a question?
Yeah.
In verse 22, it says the practice of all the Bodhisattvas is never to entertain concepts which revolve around dualistic notions of perceiver and receiver. And I always had this lingering doubt that a dualistic mind cannot perceive itself as non-dualistic. It sounds to me like trying to tell someone to stop seeing colors. Like, how can the mind grasp it? Like, even when I do a meditation about mind itself, I can never actually grasp the mind in its nature. It sounds like so elusive that it's almost impossible.
Tanda nishutsani dilachisina. Tichino nishutsani dinana.
Dubelenzera. Chisaji chibamine kala shenjachi ngobona se.
Dinala ni yurikpa la tansra, yuriken la jura. Tendegi ani nima gi tawa de sama ani pongore songro asta. Ani kurangi samnataya la chena ani tendegi ani yuda yujin ra, yurige gi lo, yujin riken gi lo ra. Ani yuriken gi yujin gi lo ra. Ani yu kurang ra. Tendegi ani samlo yujogi ani tobachi ki analogy ki isra. Ani yu da karsa nima mahinki ki ra. Tawa dila ni nganzo sapalo te togi uro mare samge dus. Kainsa na kurang gomjaya tuzuzela ani samji rangshin ro ra. Tendegi ana gomjaya yung di zama samji rangshin la yati da pe nyongwa tohne dhubya pe kakbore dus ra. Pe na chashana ta nganzo ki tsunra la yana tong degi ro ra. Ani ta tanda la du zamba ani yujin yo ra. Yujin ki sheba da yu kurang nija la yani pa di nawa yo ra. Nawa tanga yo ma re sungi yo ra. Ta tsunra la yadi yu ro ra. Tsunra kurang ani tonga yo ma re la na ta kakbo ra. Tsunra kurang tonga yo ma re la na kakbo ra. Oti dabo ani di tis nyamlen che kakbo ra torge dos.
Chitan tawanda da kangi semsira. Senyi duni tribi tata tres. Teni shina zunzen sema nam. Yila mechi jesela le zunzen sema nam. Ta tanda khala la na dilara. Chitan hawan da ta kangi sengi triba. Chitan ki sensa bilu chitan sengi dani drila ya tigola shigisara. Senyi duni triba dan. Chitan ki rashi korangi triba tata rashi mara demba mara tongpa nire la ora. Teni shini zunzen zungwa dan zemba la digala da yudu chini digda ra zunzen sema nam yela meji jesela le ta khanza nganzu gi lo gi pa patasa gi yudu inare tangi gi lo de inare dinje ninja khala na yu rangun tuba da demba tuba gi tonga de la ora dende ji sana kala sana tang rashi gi maduba demma maduba tuba da tewa imba ra ta tanda kora gi chöshi le ji pe shaida pero nganzu chö di Tsushi sebu mabu ka, dila nga tu mila shagida, ra. Di sebu re, di mabu re, la nga sing tuwe chi, ra. Ta ina di, chidangi pa cheba chana pe mabu chea, ra. Di nga la pa, pe na nga tsushi sebu ro tongo ya na, pa ki yu ting la, ndu mindu, kanda shagida. Nga ki sebu tongma na chi, ku ki daga na tongo de. Pa tsaga da na pe kali kabu cha de, ra. 이네 코랑게 지당이 곰다 지 생게 내릴라 내단라 선다한테 빼버려라. 당한테 대단한테 계셔버 생도 거도 생 가르치기도 생기 실내 가르도 펜을 가르도 단스타한테 빼버려.
So maybe herein it's verse number 22, right? So herein I think that the translation maybe it doesn't really specify what exactly is in the original. So when we use a term such as dualistic notions of perceiver and perceived, in the original text it doesn't really exactly use this term, dualistic notions of perceiver and perceived. What it seems to point towards is that what we apprehend, what the mind apprehends, which is a sign, and when the mind apprehends a sign, it equates that with the object. And now, from a Buddhist perspective, the manner in which the mind apprehends an object is affected by the manner in which there is an innate conception of intrinsic nature in the object. So as such, it affects the perception. So that's what it is referring to, that when the mind apprehends the object, then these conception works as to affect the perception, wherein the mind begins to impute an intrinsic nature onto the object. When the mind begins to reify, make something concrete out of a collection of things. So that's with regards to the perceived, the object. The object is being reified, the object is being imputed as having some sort of intrinsic nature by the mind. Now with regards to the subject, the subjective consciousness itself. So the subjective consciousness itself is turned an object, right? And as such, it is also without intrinsic nature. Its nature, so that is what we mean by dualistic notions of perceiver and perceived. And now when you cite the example that when you begin to meditate on the nature of the mind, then it is very difficult to arrive at a correct experiential appreciation of the nature of the mind. Then this is indeed true. When you cite the example of a color, then it's not saying not to see color, this instruction. That will be futile. Now, what we are saying is that color in itself does not have any intrinsic nature. That's what's being advised. Because it is when we begin to really investigate how one particular perceives a particular shade of color and how another person perceives a particular shade of color, same color, but they perceive it differently, which establishes the fact that the color itself is not intrinsically established. It depends on the perceiver. So this is what we mean.
No.
And I think this is, I think that as practitioners, I think this is something very difficult to get at, just by talking. I think it takes a lot of contemplation. For example, we had a retreat and wherein we talked about the nature of mind as being clear and knowing. Now, it is important to have an experiential appreciation of this definition, clear and knowing. It's difficult to say that this is the manner in which the mind is clear, this is the manner in which the mind is knowing. And for example, if we have never had anything sweet in our life, right? And then if you have to define sweetness to a person, then this is impossible. You can use all words, but unless and until we come to taste sweetness once, we cannot appreciate it. So I think meditation on the nature of the mind is something similar to this, that we have to experientially appreciate the clarity of mind, the lucidity of mind. And we have to experientially appreciate the knowing nature of mind, the cognitive nature of mind. Questions?
So it's a matter of faith?
Not faith.
No, but you have to trust the text that if you keep searching for it, then the nature of the mind will reveal itself?
I wouldn't really call it faith in the text, but to be willing to see if what the text says is true or not. I think that's being inquisitive, being investigative. Tang anzugi tagin anzuda semji rangshin la du khagbo yore lai pa mai nyong den ma dumna sra ani sig dishe jala du zamba se shi rigba la du zamba khaze dishe jana chi jade khabo re lai ba sewa gi chade susu gi nyong don ne tis drutu rigba gi chade nyong don ne tis drutu na ra ani se shi rigba la na khwa do ji nye yoro tema ina nganzo ngamo chi chian sama nyu mi ji la ngamo dishe jala na jathoe mara tidan chi ba do re lai ba tinde ina ni tebarang la shisha go da chogo do ala sa tinde mare ne so tonangche so gi da de la cheba chi gi samsang gi logic go res
tatara sen jordo de de taira de chitang the same la de chi kenza shu da ngi tatang zamni gal de chi ke ngazo saya thwa la kha dambu de cham chin cham sen gi zhen ra sen de ngazo thwa yore ra this only the cook same log pije tang che ra ye in this ogi same log ding az thong yore la na thong me ju in ko ni pa do ti shujin shibal den zamni andam re teng wa pe ni pa chim ra la.
So it is very difficult to get at what exactly is the mind because it's something intangible. It doesn't have any form. It's tough to point to something and say that this is the mind. That's why it must be built on the basis, the understanding that we have about the mind must come through an experiential appreciation. So as such, for example, here is a pen, and the pen didn't come about on its own. It didn't, even if all the material that is necessary to build a pen is there already on the face of this earth, it took an idea in the mind of someone to make this possible. And that's the power of our mind.
Timazi tisanta namla phuni salan jini damre chigora tesamlo ingel doer ra chebopoji nge dindi chigusun ani khunzu jejo khasa kala dini khar phugi de magi ta chota mambuji chigera tinashi ngazo ta me dinda ani khunzu tangpu nga dindi chi tin nacha de thai me sogosun tene chi khare ne chi singla chige ne samjeng de taji chige ta jed de pha tu tu digi me taji ba chini ani nacha de le phe sutu ora 예 간데 딜레 미 통해 메지 로디기 니바들 녀 땅에 소거라 자 세상한테 로디를 사미를 대바지 세상한테 사바도 메이다는 남치도 통모 많이 발라야 돼 라지기 녀모도 마 시니 메버스트는 베드 타바다 마카 탐지 쳔베 고말 토일라 덴데도 투에 니바야 요라 아니 덴다 단다 딘데 많이 기나 저기 남들도 트진다 다 바움다 된 mam부치다 그래서 영은 도라.
So I think it is important to appreciate that whatever kind of technological developments, products that we see on the face of this earth came from an idea in someone's mind, and an idea precedes these things. So as such, we can appreciate the power that our minds have. Now, we should also learn to appreciate that this unique intelligence that human beings have can also be used towards addressing the inner problems that we have also. That the mind can begin to address its own problems. Questions?
Question that mina kimira. Tangazu tanda kanga jang shabati suzuki tsang lola chikishani ani samutang de kechumurwa. Tinangazu tan ramna jidoir da jeso pashi tu de ta hakora konzira. Tegala tangazu chigi the making da mambo chi dosa. Ra suzulongole tanda di tebi yang siang se lo ya dang ra. Ani khali tambo sayule deba di nga chitung marasan seshina chayam ra. Chi komba chena azulala. 곰날 해야 면 어디 가야 왜 가리 담보도 못 가래 가보 싶더나 알리 때네 빌로로로 안질때 아 근데 돈이 요새선 빨리 빠르 소소에 나한테 투사르선 되네 롤레 뭐라 지상 아저 이게 니마 딱 고민디 제대로 쉬워지다 제가 저 얘기도 뭐 송고 러저시 쉬워지나 시 쉬어서 다리지 시하다 보다 재산이 나 이유시나 이거 말아 지상 아저 니마 먼저 칼라디 뒤숨도 따다 서드고다 되나시기 데블로에는 치치치랑치랑 레디신도스 시디 고쇼게 건다 가디이너라 질로에 가디란 테스트 로 안텔 산타에 되게 잡다.
So now if there are no questions, maybe we take this time to reflect on what we studied and how we need to carry this forward. So I'm sure that as we discuss these 6 great perfections and the many other things in this text, then if you still have the feeling that maybe I cannot really practice these things, maybe this is something beyond me, maybe this is a little bit difficult to relate to, I think that it is important that we give the text a chance and we revisit the text again and again from time to time and to reflect at other times and to see if anything changes. And because in Buddhism we say that there is nothing which becomes easier when one becomes familiar with it. So if we take it upon ourselves to familiarize ourselves with this text and its instructions again and again, then over time, I think it will help us to become motivated, to overcome any kind of discouragement that we might have felt initially. And as such, we must learn to be consistent in the effort that we put into our spiritual practice. Our teachers used to say that your effort must be consistent and unending, like the flow of a river. So we should also take this advice to heart, that if we are to see some effects and benefits of these spiritual practices in our lives, then we must ensure that we approach it consistently, that the effort that we put into our practice is consistent.
아니 가서 다들라 장사바데 강에 버들로 센데 샤니 아니 니리 페이다 라 텔로로디 어디 임바레도 삼야 라렌토디 타마투나 먼저 뒤져 돌아처럼 저 다른 분은 아니 도수만 붙이단 레라 아티선 남시야 보면 되가라 테지 그트네기 전에 삼각강이 테니도 라 남시 집으면 되가라 미기 생각을 데스칼레로다 근데 데칼레 몽비잘레 차례 아니 결혼적이 단답받이나 간시버디 허다바다 냠내체 되게 참으라 인지민이가 저 취취는 타안에 인고마 당도 지난번에 베저 심케는지는 미제는 삼치버라 취취고 원데네.
So now if we are to make our time and this retreat worthwhile, then we must be able to carry these kind of instructions into our daily lives. Otherwise, it becomes futile. You spend so much time, effort to come all the way over here to attend these courses over the course of these few days, and the weather is challenging. So as such, maybe it also has an effect on your health, and maybe emotionally maybe the weather also affects us, and then you set through all these sessions. And so if we are to ensure that this is worthwhile, then we must be able to take these instructions as a part of our practice in our daily lives. Because it's not necessary for us to be ordained monks and nuns to be spiritual. It is important that we understand that we can be spiritual if we take these instructions to our hearts in our daily lives.
And then the chu kemle the color tan the chunda chu tan yin chan yin ra in chi cha nga shi kemle yin se dil nga za dewan de dungim de de chipara ra sama indi chesan de ne indi gal ani se gi chi color te chi zu yin bi chane ani nga zo chu ju lo san ta wa na ra ku chu le de cha shi ma chi bu ma yin se dil ka re pheng do danda nga zo de me ge chu bu chru la so ba so ne ra pa go ya de pa song go ya de so de so en de se dilganze kemerayda jashima ali pasha keleni ne mileni ne ra tende indigala sui zandanganze kemela tayra ra phembada chik rangla phemba janla jel phemba jin la leta me phemba jin yu andichera.
So then for us to be spiritual, it is not necessary for us to accept or to accept rebirth and karma and so forth. Maybe we can also cultivate spirituality without accepting any particular kind of faith, but we can be spiritual by simply being human in the approach that we have towards the interactions that we build in our lives, and to inform that these are motivated by an appreciation for others' well-being too. Coming from the acceptance that just as I want happiness, others want happiness. Just as I do not want suffering, then others do not want suffering. So if we can ensure that our attitudes and behaviors are motivated by such an appreciation of humanity as of our shared humanity, then this in itself is spiritual. And this can help us to become ethical. This can help us to ensure that what we do doesn't hurt others and ourselves. And so this is the kind of approach that one can have towards spiritual practices. And now, it is also important that we really investigate and experiment with these instructions and to see if they have any kind of benefits and effect in our own lives. And if they have some kind of benefits and effects in our own lives, then we can begin to practice them. But if you do not find it practical and beneficial, then you can begin to ignore them.
아니 참을 투치스라네 지 니마 가지질라 참을 하다 보다 지라 근데 지라 아니 나나 참이 다 여 멤버사는 또 참아지냐라 봐 고야체 나가지디 담아들라디 인도야체 아니 chanzo 사조 카와도이나 투데야보다 수자니 심바치우치스라.
So now as we conclude the retreat, then I want to thank all of you again for attending these sessions very attentively and participating in the discussions. And now, as we have gathered here with a common spiritual purpose, then it is indeed the case that we have accumulated some virtue. And at this point, we will conclude the retreat by dedicating the virtue that we have accumulated for the welfare of all sentient beings. (31) Sanjo Rinpoche Maje Pana Jeju Ji Jeba Nyamba Meba De Kone Konde Peore Shu
Jambe Bae
Jidar Chemba Dai Kunde Zambo Deyan De Shende Dedai Kunje Jesu Dale Je Gewai Deda Tanje Redu Ngo Desu
Shebe Jawa Damji Ngawai Kanlai Chodo Ngaba De Dagye Gewe Zawa De Gunjang Zambo Chuji Rado Ngawa Je Pama Sanjen Tangje Dendai Denju Je Nyendo Tangje Tada Tangwa Dang Chanjo Sambai Kanai Sujuba Tedai Kunji Manan Chuchi.
Okay, we break for tea, and then as we gather again, I think we take a photo.